Hello, 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 and welcome back to my channel. Today, I just want to talk about a movie that I watched. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because it deals with what I believe is a narcissistic mother. That's my belief on the situation. The movie is based on real events. Now, you know, when they make a movie that's based on real events, a lot of times they change details and what have you. I don't know exactly what specific details have been changed. So we're just going to talk about what was seen in the movie. I don't know the narrative of these people's lives or anything like that. What I do know is I'm talking about the movie that is actually streaming on Netflix right now, my favorite streaming service ever. It's called Mother. It's a Japanese film that was released July 3rd, 2020. Directed by Tatsushi Omari. I might not be saying that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. I do not know Japanese, but I'm giving it a shot. Um, the the film centers around a mother and son. The mother is Akiko. The son is Shuhei. Um, there are other characters, obviously, in this film, but that is basically what the film centers around. And it is probably loosely based on something that happened in 2016, a tragic event. I don't want to say specifically what the event was because I don't want to give away the entire movie, and I hope I don't when I film this, um, in case you decide to watch it. But it is a tragic event that happened in Japan in 2016. And when this happened, the person that committed this tragic event gave several different reasons as to why they did it, and it took them several months to investigate it. It's really a sad story. And what I believe after watching this and while I was watching this is that this is a great example of a narcissistic mother. I believe she had coexisting conditions. Maybe psychopath comes to mind. I'm not quite sure. But I did see a lot of narcissistic traits in the mother. So that's why I want to talk about it on my channel. It's a very triggering movie. And it also brings to light that, sadly, there are many children, doesn't matter what culture you're in across the globe, that grow up with mothers like this, and it just shows you the dynamic of how a child who has a mother like this, he doesn't have anything to compare it to. It's the only mother they know, and it shows how he still loved her through it all, no matter how abusive and dark, manipulative, um, and like I said, just straight plain up abusive she was to him. He loved her throughout it all. That's all he knew as a mother. It's just so sad. The saddest part about it is it's real. So that's why I want to talk about it here because it's more than just a movie. Like I said, it's based on real events. Okay. So what we saw in this movie, I'll put my reading glasses on in case I need to refer to some notes. What we saw in this movie is a young mother who, just to kind of give you the background on her family, she came from, looked like a nice, stable home, successful parents, it appeared, um, financially successful, financially stable parents that raised her to be successful. But one part in the movie you'll notice where she said, "Oh, you spent all the college fund money on my sister." So I felt like that was a favored child syndrome. Like she felt like her sister was favored, and they were like, "No, well, you had horrible grades. You're the one that messed that up." Now, how it's very brief, and we don't really know the history behind that, whether they did favor the sister or whether they did pour all their money, love, and attention into the sister, or whether she really did mess up her opportunities. That part we don't know. But that to me was the first clue. In her mind, her sister's the favorite. So that could be sparking her narcissistic tendencies, right? Or she could have been already wired to be a narcissist, and that just gave her a spark, put a spark under her to become the worst kind of narcissist. She was a terrible person. But the sister was successful. The sister had good grades in school. The sister went through college. The sister was responsible, made good money, and she was, I think, I want to say, if I remember correctly, a high school dropout, had a child. She wasn't married to the father. She couldn't keep a job. She was lazy. I think a lot of it had to do with her. I think her family probably would have supported her if she had a better work ethic and so forth, but she just couldn't pull herself together. I don't know. Maybe there was even some type of chemical imbalance, keeping her from being successful. I'm not sure. I don't want to read too much into it, but that's just one of the first clues. In her mind, her sister was a favorite child. Um, so basically, she was very neglectful of her son. She didn't like him going to school. She didn't like going to work. She couldn't keep a job. They were on welfare. They lived in this like 1 or 2 room apartment. She couldn't keep the utilities on. She would abandon him for days, weeks at a time. She'd go out of the state, city, whatever it was. She was out of town and leave him there alone. And he was a young child. I want to say he was under 10, maybe 6, 7. And she would be gone, just leave him there to fend for himself. And if you think this doesn't happen around here in the US, or maybe even someone or a family member, or it happens here too. It's just so sad to see the kids going through this, where he had to fend for himself. He was having to, they didn't even have hot water. He was having to eat raw ramen noodles, and it was just so crazy. And at one point, while he was left alone, while she was off partying with some guy, the power went out. So they didn't have hot water, didn't have gas, and then the last thing they did have, which was power, boop, went out in the middle of him fending for himself. So he was sitting there in an apartment with no power. Crazy. But she, as what I believe to be as a narcissist, she had to get her validation from external sources, which would be men, and it would be random men she barely knew. And she liked to have sex with random men. And she had no boundaries. She had a lack of boundaries with her child. So she would have sex with random men right there with him in the vicinity. Um, it was so crazy. Like, if she had no care in the world that he could hear him, possibly see him. There was one scene in the movie where they were staying in a hotel room, and they were all sharing a bed, him, her, and one of her boyfriends. And she was trying to have sex with the boyfriend with her son in the bed, and he climbed up out of the bed and went into the bathroom and hid in the tub. But she had no concern in the world that her son was right there. Just total lack of boundaries. So much enmeshment going on in this family. Um, it was just, she was a toxic narcissist. But nothing would stop her. She was the center of her own universe, so nothing would stop her from getting that external validation and narcissistic fuel, in the form of sex. In that case, um, even if her son was right there, she had no concern for boundaries, or no concern for him, for his mental well-being, his physical well-being. None of that. Very neglectful. So basically, she would allow herself to be physically abused. She would allow her son to be physically abused. Anything to keep a man around, you know. So, I want to talk about, while I stumbled upon the topic of enmeshment. one thing, I just want to bring up a few things of about what that is. So when a family is too enmeshed, it means that no one feels entitled to their own thoughts or feelings. B, one person speaks for everyone. C, individual privacy is impossible. And I just gave you an example of that. And there was never any privacy. Never any privacy in this family dynamic. Never any privacy. D, ambitions beyond family are disloyal. I mean, means you're disloyal. And just hitting on those 4 points, um, the one person speaks for everyone was always her, obviously. She spoke for everyone. And as the son became older in the movie or in real life, he wanted to explore his own interests. He wanted to get an education. He wanted to become better. But she always spoke up. She always spoke for the family, and she made all the decisions for the family, for him. And later on, there came another child into the picture. But she definitely was the spokesman for the family. Of course, with individual privacy, there was even a scene in the movie where they were in that same hotel room, and her and her boyfriend were taking a bath, a bubble bath in this large jacuzzi tub. And they were like, hey, what's his name again? Shuhei, come get in the tub. Like, come take a bath with us. And granted, nothing sexual happened in that. You know, they weren't like molesting him or anything, but just the lack of personal boundaries, the individual privacy was not there. They forced him to strip down and jump in the tub with them. And it wasn't for sexual gratification. It was just the sheer lack of privacy, lack of boundaries. You know, and as he was a grown boy, he should have been entitled to having boundaries and having privacy. But in a family like that, in an enmeshed family system, there's no such thing, you know. His like I said again, his ambitions beyond the family means he's disloyal. So by him wanting to branch off and do something for himself, by him wanting to basically, there came a point in the movie where they became homeless and were sleeping on the street, and the mother had no concern for the fact that they were sleeping on the street because it was all about her. Like, she viewed her kids as an extension of herself, like your random narcissist. She viewed them as tools, accessories. She didn't view them as individual people. She didn't think about them as, let me think about what their best interest is. Maybe I should let my son go be with his father because the father wanted his son. She never thought about what was in his best interest. She viewed him as an extension of herself. She viewed him as a tool to get what she wanted, and I'll go into that too in a minute. She viewed them as her property, and then there's many parts in the movies where she made statements where you could clearly see that in her mind, her kids were her property. So she never thought about what was in their best interest. So anyway, they were living on the street for a period of time, and when that was discovered, the people from the welfare system found them living on the street. She was very sick, and they put them in a shelter. And one of the ladies that was working for the state that was funding the shelter wanted to put the boy in school so he can get his education, because by then he was growing. He became much older, and he hadn't been in school his whole life. And she came out of the foster system. She was an orphan as a young child, and she could see part of herself in him, and she wanted to really help him become better, to come to escape this situation, to rise above the situation, to make something out of himself and become better as an adult. And she was really trying to push him into the direction of going to school. And when they had that resource available for them, and he really wanted to do it, but the mother was guilty. Again, that ambition he had was beyond the family, so that made him disloyal. So the mother starts manipulating and gaslighting and using emotional blackmail against him for wanting to become better by going to school and saying things like, well, if you want to, do that and go to school, I'm going to just disappear with your sister, things like that to emotionally blackmail him. It's kind of like, when a narcissist says, oh, I'll just kill myself, like that type of thing. Well, we'll just disappear if you want to do that. But he's wanting to do something for him to better himself, to make a situation better. But it was beyond the family. So that made him disloyal. I mean, definitely crazy. Some serious enmeshment going on there. And it got to the point where she was totally against him going to school. She wanted him to continue to operate as an extension of herself, was totally disregarding the idea of him going to school and becoming better and becoming an individual and becoming educated. She would say things like, you're too weird to go to school. People are just going to make fun of you. No one likes you but me anyway. That's something totally a narcissist will say. Even if you're in like a narcissistic relationship, you'll have your abusive partner say stuff like that. Nobody likes you. You're lucky to have me. I'm the only one that would be with you. Like that's something totally a narcissistic partner would say. And that's what she was saying to her son. Nobody loves you. I'm the only one that loves you. They talk about you behind your back. That's that whole isolation. So sick. It was just really making me angry to see that. But again, he's been abused and manipulated his whole life. He's never been able to develop his emotional intelligence. So he just soaks it all up. Oh, my mom's the only one that loves me. Oh, can't go to school. Have to continue being her punching bag. And it's so crazy. So anyway, they had that going on. And again, it all just ties back to the no one feels entitled to their own feelings and their own thoughts. No, he wasn't entitled to having his own feelings and own thoughts. She thought for him. She felt for him. And if he started to feel a certain way, she backtracked it and she made sure he didn't feel that way. She made sure to discount his feelings and gaslight him and make him question himself, make him question the validity of his feelings. There was so many narcissistic red flags in this movie. Like it to just be a great thing to watch, just to be able to study and see, oh yeah, that's how a narcissist is. Now I'm not saying every narcissistic parent acts like that. Like she was on the extreme as far as toxic narcissist, or at least had narcissistic traits. But like I said, I think she had some coexisting because she got really, really, really crazy. Anyway, let's see. She would say, like I said, the public shaming, that's another thing. She would public shame, like even when he was a little kid and she'd be around public officials or different people they run into, she'd say, oh, he can't go to school because he's so weird and he just can't fit in and he'll only get bullied if he goes to school. And he'd just stand there. Like she really instilled that in his mind, like, no, he's not good enough to go to school. Just publicly shaming and had everyone really thinking that and had him thinking that most of all. So he was never able to get his education. So let's see. And the crazy thing too, another thing is he felt like she loved him because she breadcrumbed him. It's kind of like she'd abuse him. She let him get physically abused. She'd neglect him. She'd mentally abuse him. And then she'd like give him a hug. Oh, I love you. Like throw him a breadcrumb before she abused him some more. The other thing is she would use him to manipulate manipulate things from like other family members. Like she needed money because she was so lazy she would never work and she didn't know how to support herself. So if she wanted money from a family member, she'd send him. He'd be 6, 7 years old, sending him over there. Oh, try to get money from my sister. Try to get money from grandma, grandpa. and she manipulated people through him his whole entire life. So he felt like he had to actually be her caretaker. So that left him with guilt. So when his father stepped in the picture and tried to ask him, hey, when he was younger, why don't you just come live with me? I can tell you're not being taken care of. You look like you need a haircut. You're not bathing. You're always needing money, and I'm paying child support. I don't understand where the money's going. Please, please, please come live with me. And he's like, I can't. Well, you would think, why would you want to stay there and be abused and not go with your father who clearly wants you? Well, because he felt at that point responsible for his mother, which is another, it's trauma. He he had to grow up at such a young age to where he was taking on the responsibility of his mother. Like he was the caretaker at a young age, and he felt like she couldn't survive without him, even though he was only like 6 or 7 years old. Classic, classic toxic narcissist. Um, let's see. There's more. I mean, clearly the movie gets a lot crazier. Um, really acts, really gets really off the chain. But those are just some things, so that really stood out when I was watching it, and made me think of just how narcissistic this woman was and how common it is for narcissistic parents to act like that. Maybe not to the extreme, maybe they might not be as extremely abusive as she was, but just the manipulation tactics, the gaslighting, the guilt trips, the blame shifting, um, the whole lack of boundaries, the enmeshment, the emotional blackmail, just the things she was doing. It's really, actually, it would be a good thing to watch, it's kind of triggering, like, not kind of, it's very triggering. It's a very triggering movie. It's kind of like watching a documentary, actually, more so than a movie. And you have to read the subtitles, so it's all in Japanese. But it's so realistic, it's so realistic and educational, really educational. The climax of the movie is quite horrific, and like I said, it's based on true events. So knowing that this can happen, and the dark path that dynamic like this in the family can take a person down, especially a child. I think it's really actually important to watch something like this so you can see what we're really dealing with when we're dealing with this demon. I think there's a demon behind narcissism. I mean, there's no other way to describe this depth of evil, and that's what was operating in this woman. It was it was just pure evil. It's something that just makes you want to snatch the kid up, give him a hug, take him in, adopt him, do all the unprogramming you can. But this poor man now is going to have to deal with the damage that's been inflicted on him and his sister as well for the rest of their lives. All of that damage has been inflicted. Kids are like little computers, and they're blank slates when they're entrusted in our care, when we have children, and we can program them to be smooth operating machines, or we can program them to be little monsters, or we can program them to be you know little narcissist, or the worst humans walking the face of the planet. I mean, there's so many ways this could go. It's so sad, but it's so great to be able to educate yourself, um, and see this isn't just a bad person we're talking about. This isn't just someone who doesn't know how to be a mother. This is actually a person with severe narcissistic traits, possibly narcissistic personality disorder, possibly other coexisting disorders. I mean, I can't diagnose her. I don't know the woman and never met the woman. This is just a movie. I don't know what parts of the movie are accurate, what parts are embellished, but still interesting case study, in my opinion. So I think that you might, if you're into learning about narcissistic personality disorder, or you've had to deal with a narcissist in your life, or maybe deal with narcissistic parents, or even child abuse or trauma during childhood, or seen others go through traumatic childhoods. This is something interesting to watch. And then see the dark path that this guy took. It's pretty darn sad. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this video, these are just thoughts that are coming off the top of my head after watching this very triggering movie. I'd like to see what you guys think. If you'd like to share your thoughts below, that'd be great. We can talk about it. If you don't agree with anything I say, that's fine too. You don't have to agree. We can talk about that too. Let me know what you think. And I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.